Welcome back. So, here's the thing. When we wrapped Season 1 in late August, we knew things were going to be weird in the world for a while, because 2020, am I right? Anyway, we recorded the interview with this episode's guest on August 10th. Early August. We were so young and cheerful then. Well, cheerful as you can get. The country was really settling into the dog days of summer. A mere 163,000 Americans had died from coronavirus. The Rockettes officially canceled the 2020 Christmas show. 365,000 bikers joined together for the 80th Sturgis Rally and Super Spreader event. So, pretty early normal start to August by 2020 standards. At the time, we had planned on talking about nerd culture in this episode. It made sense. I'm a big nerd about a few things. Our guest is also a self-proclaimed nerd. It would have been a perfect marriage of commentary and commentator. Now, know what you're thinking. Xander, this year's been a non-stop balls-to-the-wall, unremitting spiral into misery and chaos. What made you think you could get away with such frivolity? Good question. In any case, mid-August brought us Joe Biden's announcement that he had chosen Kamala Harris as the first BIPOC woman to serve as a vice presidential running mate. Yeah, that was actually only like 6 weeks ago. Time is, weird here in the darkest timeline. Postmaster General Louis DeJoy acknowledged his USPS budget cuts would lead to mail delays that may cause mail-in ballots from all 50 states and D.C. to not be received in time to be counted in the general election. On August 24th, in Lafayette, Louisiana, police shot and killed an unarmed black man in front of his 3 children. The very next day, more than 60 people were arrested in Louisville, Kentucky as they protested the death of Breonna Taylor. And to top it all off, a 17-year-old from Illinois crossed state lines to shoot and kill 2 protesters and wound a third on the streets of Kenosha, Wisconsin. The only bright spot in August was when senior advisor to President Trump and spokesghoul Barbie, Kellyanne Conway, announced her resignation to spend more time with her 15-year-old daughter. The daughter who, incidentally, had been spending weeks publicly seeking emancipation from her parents and roasting her mom and dad like a Thanksgiving turkey on Twitter. Turkey. And just to be clear, that was just August. As late 20th century philosopher Ferris Bueller once stated, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you can miss it. Those are sage words of wisdom coming from Cameron Fry's Tyler Durden for a non-mirror universe, of course. But here in the chaos realms of the Immaterium, there's no time to stop and smell the hemlock. The atrocities are coming so hard and so fast that, at this point, the welcome respite of a single blink could prove to be deadly. You may think I'm exaggerating. You may be right. I may be crazy. But in just the last week and a half, Attorney General William the Cabbage Patch Gargoyle Barr told state and federal prosecutors to consider charging protesters with sedition. The White House sabotaged a plan to mail 650 million face masks to U.S. households. A federal court halted drastic operational changes at USPS, warning of widespread disenfranchisement. An ex-coronavirus task force aide endorsed Biden, citing Trump's disregard for human life. Amy Doris became the 26th woman to accuse Trump of sexual misconduct. Doctors at ICE detention facilities in Georgia performed hysterectomies on immigrant women without their consent. Trump touted his patriotic education plan to counter alleged left-wing indoctrination in schools. Feminist icon, civil rights champion, Supreme Court Justice, and overall badass, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg succumbed to cancer at age 87 on Rosh Hashanah. Rest in power, notorious RBG. Rest in power. And within hours of Bader Ginsburg's death, Majority Leader Mitch Prolapsed Necktie McConnell vowed to hold a vote on a new justice within the 46 days till the November 3rd election, even though he refused to hold confirmation hearings in 2016 for President Obama's nominee Merrick Garland within 237 days of an election. California grappled with evacuations and toxic air as record-breaking wildfires continued to blaze. A massive climate clock was unveiled in New York that counts down the critical time left for action to prevent the most destructive effects of the climate catastrophe from becoming irreversible. Attorney General William the Frog That Just Farted Barr threatened to cut billions of dollars in federal funds to New York City, Seattle, and Portland after designating the cities as anarchist jurisdictions. The Trump administration tapped climate change denier Ryan Flat Earth Frat Boy Mao for the top position at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. A government watchdog organization announced they were probing the Pentagon's use of force and interest in deploying heat rays against protesters. Florida Governor Ron, definitely not wearing pants at that Zoom meeting DeSantis, announced legislation to suppress protests. Louisville police announced a state of emergency ahead of the Breonna Taylor grand jury decision. The Pentagon spent $1 billion of coronavirus funds on military supplies. Trump said the coronavirus,
but it affects virtually nobody. It's an amazing thing.
As the U.S. death toll tops 200,000. Senator Mitt, there's too much starch in my magic underwear, Romney, announced that he will back a rapid vote on Trump's Supreme Court nominee. U.S. Court of Appeals judge and front-runner to replace RBG, Amy Crazy Eyes Coney Barrett, is a member of a cult-like patriarchal Catholic group that encourages women to submit completely to their husbands and swear a lifelong loyalty to the church. A grand jury declined to charge any of the 3 white police officers who killed Breonna Taylor with her murder. Donald Trump announced that he won't commit to a peaceful transfer of power if he loses the election.
Will you commit to making sure that there is a peaceful transferal of power after the election?
Well, we're going to have to see what happens. You know that I've been complaining very strongly about the ballots.
Trump praised the good genes of a mostly white audience in Minnesota, citing eugenics theories.
You have good genes, you know that, right? You have good genes. A lot of it's about the genes, isn't it? Don't you believe? The racehorse theory, you think was so different? You have good genes in Minnesota.
Far-right Trump supporters in Portland planned political assassinations. In spite of Trump's repeated insistence, FBI Director Christopher No Way Wray found no evidence of widespread voter fraud. 24 Louisville protesters, including Kentucky State Representative Attica Scott, were arrested for defying curfew to demand justice for Breonna Taylor. Kentucky Senator Rand Raman Paul said the only goal of Black Lives Matter is, quote, terrorism. Drivers attacked peaceful Black Lives Matter protesters in Los Angeles. Trump was heckled at the viewing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's casket at the Supreme Court with chants of "Vote him out." At a rally in North Carolina, Trump threatened to issue an executive order to prevent Biden from being elected president.
You can't have this guy as your president. You can't have... Maybe I'll sign an executive order. You cannot have him as your president.
And Fox News' Tucker Carlson opened his show with an explanation of why George Floyd, Jacob Blake, and Breonna Taylor, quote, actually had it coming. This all happened in a week. A week!
Are you okay?
No, not even remotely. Isn't that the whole problem right now? The way I figure it, you've got 2 options. Option 1, if you're privileged enough to do so, you can just ignore it all and hope it goes away or that somebody else fixes it. Live in a bubble of hear no evil, see no evil. And I can kind of understand why a person might take this route. The constant drumming of awful is unhealthy. It's exhausting. It's soul-crushing. Pretending that everything is going to be okay on its own is a comfort. Ignorance truly is bliss. But option 2 is much harder. Option 2 is your only option if you are black, brown, gay, lesbian, female, trans, Muslim, Jewish, atheist, young, poor, or chronically ill, just to name a few. Option 2 is necessary for healthcare workers, journalists, teachers, the unemployed, retail workers, food servers, and anyone else that either works with the public or has been declared an enemy of the state by the Trumpist states of America. While it may sound naive, while it may sound simplistic, while it may sound stupidly optimistic, the second option is to get out and vote. Vote in numbers like this country has never seen. 4 in 10 Americans who were eligible to vote did not do so in 2016. That needs to change. If you know someone who's registered to vote and is thinking of sitting this one out, slap them silly, grab them by their ankles, and drag their apathetic ass to the polls. If you know someone who isn't registered to vote, there's still time. Many states have an October 5th deadline. Go to vote.org to check on the deadline to register, to check on your registration status, find polling locations, check on early voting options, and more. If you're not willing to take action, get used to this as your new normal.
Will you shut up? Ah, now we see the violence inherent in the system. Shut up! Oh, come and see the violence inherent in the system! Help, help, I'm being repressed!
We'll be right back.
Woo!